If you'd like to see more content, please like and subscribe to this video and channel. Please comment as well and share the content in order to be able to reach larger audiences.
Three, yeah. 2, 1, stop recording. It's recording. So I had Dank, and I can't pronounce your name. Say it.
Andrew.
Andrew.
Asclepius.
Okay. Asclepius. Yeah. Anybody else that joins, just tell them if you see somebody hop in the chat, tell them they're being recorded. We're about to do a 12K match on Thanksgiving in Israel, in the United States. I'm in Missouri. I'm thinking about Israel a lot, but we won't talk about that in the recording because it lowers my YouTube numbers. If you want to hear about that, I've got another channel for hard news. Anyway, we're going to do a recording. Dank and Asavus both have consented to be in this recording. If it comes out good, I'll use it. If it not, I won't. I just saved my fleet. You all can see the design of it. I'm not going to share the game. Well, I guess I should. I can share the game with if someone wants to see it on Discord. If Dank wants, if you want to see it and give advice.
I'm sharing my
I'm down
on
to
Discord.
I'm down to see it. I just won't. I won't help either of either. I won't actively help either player.
Fine, but it makes it more interesting for you to kibitz anyways. If you're going to look at it, I'll start it. If not, I won't.
Yeah, I will look at it. I will probably go back and forth. I will go back and forth between the two, but I won't say anything that will give an advantage to either of you.
That's fine. And I trust Asifus not to look at mine because I've played one PvP match in the past 6 months, and it was against. It was just because somebody decided they were new and they riled me up. I find that right now with my current stress level that the PvP matches tend to stress me out. I don't know why I'm playing right now. I'm feeling the stress, but it's under control. So I'm not feeling like running under the blanket right now.
I don't know.
So I guess
I wonder. There hasn't been a lot of activity in PvP with this in general recently.
Well, I can always get it. I have a list of friends. I can always get someone to play with, but a challenging player, not so often.
There's
I mean, obviously
I kind of wish that I kind of wish it's been a long time since we did like an official event here, like a conquest or a tournament.
Yeah, no one wants to put the time in. I don't have the time to do anything but play in it. I'm not sure I have the time for that. Somebody has to organize it, and the last person who was getting ready to organize it was FaZe, and frankly, FaZe doesn't like me, and he mistreats me in public quite often. So I would probably not participate in his conquest anyway. And they're so rigid about the rules, and they don't want to experiment. And Joker always finds a way to break the rules, and it just becomes a gigantic cluster. You know what? Okay.
Yeah. You're not going to say it. You're not going to say the word for the YouTube.
It doesn't matter. I've never had the F word get these videos hung up because I always mark them not for children because I don't consider this content because of the. If you talk about the lore, you're almost always getting close to severe R or X rated. So
yeah, I mean you're only talking about a minor genocide of the human race. Not much. Not much that would go afoul.
My father's son from his third marriage was watching Private Ryan at age 5. I thought that was inappropriate. I don't want to ever be blamed for a child getting a nightmare.
Right.
All right. So my content in YouTube is all not children. If somebody wants to show my content, that's on them, not me as a creator.
Yeah. Somebody's
So,
for context from my lore, for my fanfic, right? So essentially, and I was talking to Dank about this. So my character's ship is a Mercury class.
I love it already.
Battlestar Helios. That's the ship name.
BattlestarMercury.com. That's my hero ship.
So, and what wound up happening was they were on.
It's going to launch, by the way.
So essentially, they kind of knew what was coming, and the reason that I brought that up is, Helios was getting ready for like a deployment, right? They were like
Pegasus was going into the shop for a major refit.
Yes, they were essentially doing the same thing to Pegasus. They were doing what they were doing to Pegasus to Helios, but there's a
They were
difference.
ahead, they were more ready to deploy than the Pegasus was.
There's a major difference to that.
But that
They
gives you the
were
ability to have better weapons and possibly even resist the CMP.
that, but Helios wasn't docked. They were undocked because what they were doing was, instead of having them docked and vulnerable, they were just shuttling the crews over from the shipyard, right? And by doing that, and I was telling Dank, half of a good 20% of Helios's crew is on shore leave, right? And when I say that they knew what was coming, the only reason that it was kind of really known what was coming was because what what my character wound up doing, right, is he just had a feeling something was going to happen.
Premonition, yeah.
So, yeah, he wound up launching recon raptors, right?
That's what I would do.
Um,
I'd have
he
cap
had
up. It's
one.
like, you remember Pearl Harbor story? The army general in charge of the Air Force did not have any cap up on Pearl Harbor. That's why we got killed.
Yeah.
Same basic thing.
But anyway, so long story short, he had recon raptors. He had one by the armistice station, right? And one near the red line. Not over it, but near it, right? So long story short, right? He knew what was coming the minute armistice station got destroyed. Because once it got destroyed, his recon raptor relayed it to Helios, right?
Makes sense to me.
So, and then the minute that they got the news, the Raider Strike Force jumped into Scorpio shipyards. But you want to know something cool?
What?
By the time the Raiders jumped in, Helios already had two Viper squadrons up. By the time that the Raiders jumped into Scorpia, Helios already had two Viper squadrons in the air.
Makes sense.
With another
makes sense
another tube in the launch tubes. But with how many Raiders rolled up, you're not going to be able to stop all of them with two squadrons.
No.
Let alone
75. 75 is a standard complement of a full strength squadron, as far as I recall from the canon. There's dispute about that, but whatever.
So essentially, right, Helios winds up taking out a decent amount of the Raiders, and then she recalls her Vipers, but guess what?
What happened?
She notices two Jupiters that are still intact. So Helios, aka my OC ship, and my OC or whoever is, his communications officer, communicates over to the two Jupiters, get your FTL spun up and ready, and get ready to fucking go. So the two Jupiters link up with the Helios, along with three Valkyries that managed to survive, right? So they all kick up their FTLs and get the fuck out of Dodge, right?
Yep.
Then, as they're going on the run, they come across a civilian fleet. Guess what just so happens to be in that civilian fleet? A mobile dry dock that's also acts as a fleet tender, right?
Oh, yeah. You know what I use for that in my stories? Have you read any of my stories?
I read a little bit of it.
I use Daedalus, actually.
You should.
I actually recovered Daedalus in book 3, and it's now at the home system of the fleet, with the main characters lost at the end of book 3. So,
So long story short, so three Valkyries, one Mercury, two Jupiters, right?
right.
Fully crewed. So with the Helios, right? Um, so their first order of business was to get enough materials and enough resources to produce enough Mark 7 Vipers for both Jupiters, right?
That makes sense because
Because
the foundries on the Helios, the
yeah,
Mercury class.
because you got to think about it like this, right? Yes, the Vipers that the Jupiters have are good against Raiders. The Mark 7s are better though. So once Helios gets all the Mark 7s made, this is how they actually wind up training the pilots, right? So they break it into two phases, right? The first phase is running on the simulators, right?
Yep.
That's the first phase. The second phase is everybody who was put on a simulator is put into the cockpit of a Mark 7 and assigned a training officer from the Helios who has flown the Mark 7 more longer,
Right.
and
Makes
they're
sense
put
to
out into
me.
space and they're taught how to like fly like in real, like for real. And the one thing that the one thing that you know the training officers really emphasize is they emphasize safety. If
Yep.
they notice something that's not safe, or there's a pilot doing something that's not safe, they call the training off immediately.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. I mean, I don't know why. I guess for television drama reasons was the reason they had so many incidents with safety issues.
Safety protocols aren't interesting television drama, so they tend to be they tend to go by the wayside. Um,
Oh,
is
that didn't work.
somebody have somebody in the background yelling?
Not
Yeah,
me.
that's my sister. She's loud as hell.
Okay, that's okay. Never mind. That's fine.
Well, thank you all for participating in the recording, and thank you for the match. It's my wife is happy that I'm playing the game instead of working more. We have three major projects going on, one of which is a production disk migration with a unique setup. The only place we have EMC disks is in the is in production environment. So to migrate from an new disk array to an old disk array is a royal pain in the tush, to put it mildly.
But no, so essentially, um and I brought up to Dank, you know, so the Cylons, right, realizing that, oh shit, a Mercury and two Jupiters got away, right?
Yeah, they're pissed off
Um
about that. They weren't counting on that at all. They wanted much
no,
better rates than that.
they're mad. So what they wind up doing is you know how Galactica was usually trailed by like one or two base ships? No.
Mm-hmm.
My
Two
character's
and
my
a red.
character's fleet has an entire Cylon fleet chasing them.
Well, that would make sense. The Cylons had probably 1,000 base stars, or at least 500 or 600 based on what you saw in the plan.
But you also so this is the one thing that I told I was telling Dank, right? So Dank, do you want to tell him how how I set the fights up with my ships and shit?
Well, from what it sounds like, from what you told me, I think this is an interesting idea. He's going to use Excel spreadsheets. Because
Oh no, okay, so not that. So essentially, right? What, like, in the story, like, right? How, like, my character sets up his ships is he'll set up all three of his battleships, his Mercury, his Jupiters, in a straight broadside battle line.
oh
right?
that was cool.
And um
So
Yeah, let's
like
just
the World
say the
War One
Cylons
battle lines,
have
right?
the Cylons had a very, very bad day.
So you're talking like the Battle of Jutland, World War One type battle lines, Age of Battleships.
Like,
Willis, you heard
yes,
of
essentially.
Willis Lee and the World War II and the
Yes, essentially.
Guadalcanal campaign?
One ship behind the other.
Right, gotcha.
Stand aside, I am coming through.
This
That's
is
a-
Ching Li.
Oh, he is awesome. I just read his biography. It's so sad that he died in 1945.
Yeah. He also
Dude,
It was
Okay,
him
very
against
underrated
12
as well.
him against
Okay.
12 battleships after the South Dakota knocked itself out of the battle.
I did not know who he was until I watched the Fat Electrician video about him.
Of course.
I did. I just read
Um,
another one about the five admirals. Leahy I'd never heard of. He was basically chief of staff
But anyway,
to Frank
so
and Delano Roosevelt and to Truman. I'd never heard of him, but Lee wasn't mentioned in that book, and he was the best battleship admiral in the American fleet.
So I was telling Dink, right? So my OC, Andrew, who hence name Admiral Andrew, right? So he takes discipline very serious. So essentially, for context, Andrew served in the first Cylon War, right?
Right.
So
he's an old fart then,
his
right?
parents were first Cylon War fleet admiralty, right?
Yeah, like my Lawson character, her grandmother was an admiral too. How she got the name, I never explained.
But you want to know something? Andrew's parents are dead, but we don't know how they died.
Probably in the war. You think?
But there's some people, right? What was the battlestar that got blown up in Blood and Chrome? Was that the Atlantia or the Columbia?
The Acheron. And it was misstated.
No, the one that we see, the one that Dom was flying by.
Yeah, that was it. Actually, they said it was a cruiser. In the lore, in the game, this game, it was made a Battlestar, but it was the Acheron. It was listed as a cruiser. But I'm
talking about the actual Jupiter that was blown up.
The one that Adama flew through, that wasn't a Jupiter. Actually, it was in this game, but they called it a cruiser. It was the Acheron, though. And they went to meet the Acheron, and it was in pieces. And then Adama flew through the FDL and the wreckage and took out the Cylons. That's what I remember, anyway.
It was the Columbia. Columbia
was destroyed again in this game, and I see. Yeah, that was a Columbia BS-83 in the game lore here. You're right.
Yeah.
Now I know what you're talking about. I thought you were talking about where Adama flew his Raptor in Blood and Chrome through the FDL and killed the Cylon. That was different.
Yeah, no, that I'm talking about Operation Raptor Talon.
Yeah, that is I remember what you're talking about now. That was the Columbia that was destroyed. Yes.
Yeah. So there's speculation by some people that Andrew's parents were on the Columbia when it went up, right? But there's other people. Hold on. There's other people who are saying that his parents were on Caprica City when it was bombarded by the Cylons, and they died there. We don't know how they died.
Makes sense to me again. Oh wait, I got a lot.
So the thing is, and I was telling Dank, like, Andrew's kid is on the Helios crew, right? Originally, what the plan was for like the story is Andrew was gonna make his kid his XO, right? Because Andrew's in his like 40s and 50s at this point. He's getting up there in age, and he's gonna need somebody when he gets to a point where he can't command anymore to take over.
Right.
Of
course, the available candidates are not that.
What was kind of realized kind of early on. Give me a second. My headphones died, so if it picks my sister up, I'm sorry.
No problem. I don't care.
So so I kind of realized when I was like thinking of this, that wouldn't make a lot of sense for my character's kid to be his XO, Because nepotism. Anyway, so kind of the context is so funny story actually. Helios came across Galactus, right? It was post New Caprica, but they came across them. So I was telling Dink, right? So when Helios came across Galactica, right, and he found out what happened to the Pegasus, you can probably imagine how pissed he was.
I would say quite pissed.
So let's just say that when he found out about what happened to the Pegasus, he had Adama and Lee come to the Helios. He was legitimately about to demote them both back to Viper pilots. But then Roslin showed up, and then he kind of dismissed both of them into the hallway. Essentially, what happened is Adama got like a reprimand, and Lee got demoted back down to CAG.
That's a demotion?
Andrew kind of took a playbook out of took a page out of Kane's playbook.
Gotcha.
And instead of leaving Apollo as Galactus CAG, he put him as Helios's CAG, right? Because that's just having Apollo as a Galactus CAG isn't going to work as father-son type shit.
I totally agree with you on that.
So he winds up having Apollo transfer to his ship, and he kind of like, okay, well, so he has to come. He has a choice to make, right? Does he does he get Apollo and then jump back to his fleet, or B, does he stay with Galactica's fleet and just have his fleet meet up with him, right? Because you got to think, yes, technically at this point, Andrew's a fleet admiral, so he can do whatever the fuck he wants to do. Pardon my language. So he can do whatever the heck he wants to do, but he doesn't want to just take Apollo and dip. So what he winds up doing is he goes to Adama and he's like, okay, listen, this is the plan. I have a fleet of my own that I have to go back to. I am going to take your son as my CAG for about 2 to 3, potentially 4 rotations of, combat of Cap, right?
Right.
And then he's going to jump back with his fleet, return Apollo to the Galactica, and probably just put someone from Helios back as CAG. So, but what winds up happening is, as Helios is getting ready to leave, guess what shows up?
Cylons?
Two Cylon base stars. Cylon base stars show up.
That's enough to give some indigestion on the colonial side, no doubt about that.
So, but you want to know the one thing about Helios? She has her full crew complement, right? And all of her fighter squadrons are fully active.
I have to put the Caprica map, the one that gives me freaking vertigo.
Right? So, now, mind you, like, post New Caprica, right? Galactica was flying with a lot of old Vipers and Mark 7s, right?
Right.
No, the entirety of Helios was all Mark 7. So,
well, that makes sense because the Mark II was not in production. The only reason that Galactica had Mark II is because of the museum.
Yeah. So,
and the Mark 7 was flying off of any existing Jupiters at the time of the fall. That's well known.
What wound up happening was, Helios called over to Galactica. She's like, launch your Cap, we'll launch ours. Now, Helios's flight deck had gone really, really good with getting Vipers in launch tubes. They had 4 squadrons up before Galactica could put one in the air. That's how effective Helios' flight deck was. They could put 4 Viper squadrons in the air before Galactica could put even 1 in the air. Right? And
Right.
one way that, and I was telling Bank about how Helios deals with security because they found out that Solomon was security, right? So each officer, each flag officer, whatever officer you are, and crewmen have key cards, right? They're biometrically registered via the crew manifest, right? So if you're not on the crew manifest, key card doesn't work, right?
Makes sense, except the Cylons probably could.
Cylon,
Remember, we wrote the
realistically,
operating system
Cylon,
for the new ships, Gaius Baltar and the Six.
yeah. So a Cylon agent, no, they were networked to the CMP. They were networked to the CMP because they realized it was compromised. They did this all locally on Helios. So what they did was they realized, okay, well, if we do it based off of crew manifest and crew database, we don't have to worry about Cylon infiltrators because they're not on the crew manifest, right? And everybody who was brought onto Helios from the work crew was vetted. And you want to know how they tested for Cylons? Well, let's see.
The same way that Baltar did in the series, I would assume.
They had
blood test.
No, different ways. So what they did, right, was they had like mock key cards made when Helios was going through her refit. And essentially what would happen, right, is they were ID badges, right? If your ID, and they had a bar at the bottom.
Right.
If the bar on your ID card was green, you were good. You were human, right? But if it detected, right, you were a Cylon because they figured that out somehow before Baltar did. It would turn red. The bar on your ID card would turn red, right? So they were able to weed out a lot of they were able to solve a lot of problems by doing that. Because perfect example, there was one time when they were in dry dock, right?
Right.
Somebody tried to get on the ship whose ID bar turned red, right? They're not around anymore. So
they just got shot by the Marines.
When you first said that they gave out fake key cards, I thought you said they gave out like key cards just randomly or left them laying around to find type of people that would pick them up, pick them up to try and do nefarious stuff, and then they'd be alerted to not necessarily just Cylon saboteurs, but any other saboteurs.
Oh yeah, no.
But yeah, it seems a little weird considering there's no explanation as to how they actually figured out how to test for Cylons.
Also, can I play whoever wins this match between Unix and you? Assuming you guys don't need to go.
You'll probably have to play
essentially to answer your question, they had a way of detecting who was a Cylon, who wasn't. It just wasn't as they had it, but it was their own version that Baltar didn't make. Because, my OC met Baltar. He did not trust him one fucking bit. Pardon my French. So they're like, okay, well, we're going to make our own detector because we do not trust this man. So
smart move, not trusting Gaius Baltar, huh?
They made their own detection system. So that's how they were able to weed out a lot of Cylon agents. And it got to a point where the Cylons were like, yeah, no, we're good. We're not going to try to infiltrate their crew anymore. But So going back to the lore, so when, so you know, the only reason like Adama and Lee got saved is because of Rosin, because I guess like she kind of found out that both Adama and Lee were about to get demoted for losing the Pegasus and ramming it into a base ship, and she kind of went in
that was
there
a
and
key
kind of
strategic
convinced.
error there, if there ever was one.
Oh yeah, no,
losing the Pegasus was completely stupid. Did you write the space dock article on that? Or the space dock article on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you want to know what Andrew said to both of them? So these were the exact words. He's like, you sacrificed a modern command and control ship to save a museum ship when you could have transferred your crew from the Galactica to the Pegasus and just use that. Because the thing is, right, Andrew was a big proponent of the Mercury class. He had a Mercury class built for him, hence Helios.
Right.
Helios was supposed to be the Pegasus sister ship, but I mean, like, I kind of wrote it originally. It was going to be the sister ship of the Pegasus, but then I realized not really, because if it's a sister ship, then it's got to meet the same fate. And I really don't want it meeting the same fate of it getting rammed into a base star.
I don't know why. Are you just writing this story, or are you doing some sort of video illustration as well?
Oh no, I'm doing a story.
You're just doing the story, okay?
Yeah. So I kind of wrote it separately. So what winds up happening is going back to what I was saying before. Yeah, so Helios' flight deck. So the one thing that they realized, right, is they could automate a lot of the process, but still have humans doing it, right?
Right.
Because you can have automation doing it, but you also need humans in case the automation fucks up or breaks. So by having both components, the flight deck of the Helios and the flight deck crew of the Helios got very good at launching Vipers very quickly.
I would think so under those circumstances. Quite agree with that.
The most amount of squadrons that the Helios put out in one combat engagement was like 6.
Yeah, they say that in the lore that Pegasus, the Mercury class, can hold up to 10 squadrons, but I don't know how you're gonna, after the war starts, man that properly. But that's
because so to kind of explain. So when the Helios went mining to make enough Mark 7s to kind of cover both the Jupiters in its fleet, they had enough minerals and like stuff left over to make replacement Vipers for them if they needed them, right? So
the problem there with the pilots, though, you can't instantly create a pilot, though.
Well, you got the VR suites in the Mercury class as well, though. That would help out with that situation.
Yeah. So, and I was telling Dank, Andrew instills 3 key principles into his pilots. You come first, your squadron mates come first, and your wingmen come first. Everything else is secondary, right? Because he says getting home is secondary, because in order to get home, you need to be alive.
Yeah, that is.
He's taught his pilots, like, listen, like, if you know your ship's going down, fucking eject, because
we could build you another one.
Yeah, we can build you another one, and we can have the Starbirds out quicker than the Toaster can shoot you dead.
And Toasters are more concerned about their own survival anyway. Even with Resurrection, Resurrection is not a fun thing to go through.
No. And don't get me started on that. When Helios found out about the Resurrection ships, so this is a fun part of the lore. So in Despora, Shattered Armistice, right? In the one mission where the civilian fleet was playing dead, you've had to have to like watch it or play it, right?
Right.
They did the exact same thing because what the Helios' fleet did is they went to a system where they knew a Cylon fleet with the resurrection ship would be passing through, right?
Right.
And they went not fully powered down, but powered down to the point where it looked like they were dead, right? So what they would do, right, is when the fleet entered the system, they would wait, right? They would let the base stars pass, right? And then what they behind, because this is like in the system with asteroids, right?
Right.
They had a trick up their sleeve. They had 2 Viper squadrons hidden behind 2 asteroids. The minute the Viper squadrons got eyes on the resurrection ship, they burned for that bitch, and all Helios and the 2 Jupiters went back to full power and just started slamming them. They essentially pulled a get fucked. So, and they got really good at doing that. So then it got to a point where, okay, well, they're just taking resurrection ship after resurrection ship. So the Cylons decided, okay, well, we're not going to send our resurrection ships out with our fleets anymore if we're engaging these guys because they're just going to mollywop us. So what they wound up doing is they only wound up sending base stars. But now there was like a period of time, right, where Helios stopped getting chased. You can probably understand why. Because when you have a Mercury and 2 Jupiters absolutely stomping your face in every time you come across them, you're bound to stop chasing them for a while.
Yeah, because you don't like losing. I mean, Cylons are emotional people, or toasters, or whatever you want to call them.
So what wound up happening was they noticed, Helios's crew noticed a pattern, right? They would get like attacked, but it wouldn't be like full base star attack, right? It would be like 1 to 2 raiders, right?
Right. So what did they figure out from that?
So they figured out that they were sending scouting flights out, right? Because what the Cylons deducted is if we can't fight them while they're together, we need to fight them when they're separated, right? And they figured that out when they started noticing the pattern of Cylons sending out recon flights.
Really?
Because you had to so this is how they put it together, right? They're not looking for Tillium because they probably have a shit ton. They're not looking for any other colonial fleet assets because a good majority, other than the Galactica, got destroyed. Other than the Galactica and Helios and her group. So they kind of deducted that they're like, okay, they're either still looking for us or they're trying to catch us when we're split up. Mm-hmm. So it kind of became a thing where Andrew's like, okay, we just don't split up. We stay together. And, now mind you, the Cylons were fucking pissed because they couldn't take out Helios, right? Like, they knew about Helios. There was some sporadic information. They heard rumors that a fleet admiral survived the attacks, but they don't know if it's confirmed or not. What actually is funny is they actually managed to catch Helios like by herself, right? It wasn't for long. So Cylons managed to board Helios, right? And instead of my character staying on the bridge, he was with the Marine fire team repelling the Centurions. Because he's like, listen, I'm a military man first. I lead from the front. If my stuff's getting boarded, you best be dang sure I'm going to be there to kick their chrome teeth in.
Yep.
So when they found out that, okay, yeah, there is a fleet admiral alive, it kind of sent the Cylons into kind of a freak out, because they're like, oh, damn, okay, not only do we have Galactica with like Adama, now we've got like another Mercury with two other Jupiters with a fleet admiral.
The whole war now.
Yeah, like the tides have turned. So what they tried to do when they boarded, so the Cylons' main objective with boarding Helios was to take out Andrew. Because you want to know why? Because yes, like he had an XO who could take over, right? But he had his ship running so well under his command that it would fall apart if his XO took over, right?
Right. Well, that's the way it's supposed to be. Right?
So essentially, they failed in that because, duh. So Andrew, they kind of, all the ships kind of have, all the Battlestars kind of have a meeting. Like, okay, here's the plan. They wind up, so they sent out more recon flights, right? So you know how in the 2004 version they send a rescue team back to Caprica to get Anders and his group?
Yeah, of course. That's when Starbuck led that team.
Yeah. So essentially, they do the same thing but differently, right? What they do is they send a flight of two Raptors to Aerolon, Pycon, and Scorpio, right? Pycon and Scorpio because there are shipyards there.
Right.
They send them there to kind of like gather if there's any other survivors, right?
Right.
So they find out that, okay, yeah, there's some survivors on, Pycon, right? It's just a bunch of regular civilians, some like construction workers and stuff. So what they wind up doing is actually really, really, really cheeky. They managed to capture the heavy raider that the Cylons used to board the Helios intact, right? So what they wound up doing is actually really cheeky, really funny. So they found a way to like make it like flyable by human pilots, right? So they loaded up a bunch of Marines onto the heavy raider, right?
Whoa.
And then what would happen is the heavy raider would be followed by other Star Raptors, right? And the Star Raptors would all calibrate to the heavy raider jump systems because Cylon jump drives were better than Colonial, right? So what would wind up happening is they would jump to Pycon, right? And now the one thing about the Raptors with Helios, right? And the one thing about the crew of the Helios, they got really good at spoofing Dratus IFF signals, right?
I bet you they did, yeah.
So it's kind of funny. So when they showed up in Pycon, right? They showed up on Cylon Dratus as heavy raiders. They didn't show up on their raiders as Raptors. They showed up as heavy raiders because the Raptors had the tech on board them to spoof Cylon IFF to make them look all like heavy raiders. So they were able to jump into like Pycon's orbit, not get shot down, and rescue essentially all the civvies that were trapped. Like right from under the noses of the toasters, and they didn't even realize what happened. But of course, they also, left the toasters going away. They blew up like a planetary refinery that was processing tellurium or something like that. Because, why not send a giant middle finger to the enemy you're fighting, by blowing up their fuel supply. But yeah, no. So kind of right now, where the stories is, they're just kind of doing their own thing. At this point, they're just kind of literally is where the story is at.
Right.
And they're still not being they're being pursued, but not as heavily as Galactico was. It's every 2 days they get attacked. That's essentially it. And then going to what Dankus brought up. So what I was thinking about doing, right? I was thinking about making an Excel spreadsheet, and in the spreadsheet, right, I was gonna have the ship name, right, and then next to it was gonna be wing, fighter wing, and then the squadrons under it, right.
Right.
And every time a battle happens, there would be a small after report, and then the Excel sheet would be updated if any fighters were lost. That's kind of keeping track of everything without having to write a lot in the story.
Yeah, it keeps you from making story continuity errors, which, trust me, people will spend hours, days researching you and continuity issues just to prove you wrong.
Yeah. And and the way that I'm going to fix that is at the end of every chapter, at the end of every battle chapter, there's going to be either a screenshot or a link to the Excel spreadsheet that's going to be viewable, and it's going to be updated as the chapters go in real time. So say we're on chapter 5, right? And and that's a battle chapter, and Helios loses 4 Vipers, right? From one of the squadrons. So in my mental book, right? In order for a squadron to be rendered combat ineffective, they need to lose 5 or more Vipers.
Right.
Right. That's my basis for a squadron being combat. They lose 5 or more Vipers. Right. Anything above 5, 4, 3, 2, or 1, still combat effective. So that's how I have it set up, because it's not a thing of you lose 1 Viper and now you're combat ineffective. But one thing that I did bring up to Dankus, which you liked, is kind of the discipline of how Andrew disciplines pilots who are. So I told Dankus that no matter who the CAG is for Helios' crew, if it's a member of Helios' crew or if it's not, right, they're shown the same respect they show his pilots show Andrew. Andrew's pilots show him, right? And I brought up to Dankus, there was a time where it was a non-Helios CAG, right? Because they were doing CAG rotations with the other ships in their fleet. And long story short, the 3 pilots who wound up being insubordinate to the CAG got bragged for being insubordinate. And Dankus, if you want to tell him the idea you had to kind of for a storyline for that, I'll let you tell him.
Well, what you wanted was the pilots to was that the pilots were going to be taken off of flight rotation for a couple of weeks or so. Now, the thing is that if you're taking pilots off of flight rotation, I'm not sure how much this would actually end up increasing. Is that somebody's going to have to take over that work. So it's kind of not directly, but sort of implicitly collective punishment. So that turns the pilots against each other, or against the pilots who were insubordinate, because they're now not able to pull they're not able to pull their weight. So congratulations, you've got a self-enforcing mechanism to prevent pilots from staying out of line. That's how a lot of other areas of real world militaries work.
Peer pressure is a primary factor in discipline. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it works on elementary school and it works on elementary school kids as well. Actually, probably a little bit less. I once told a teacher that her punishing all of us for the actions of one kid was against international law and considered a war crime.
Which she must have loved that.
Yeah. The teacher loved that. But then teacher loved that. The principal loved it even more.
Did you get suspended for that?
But I think that they were. I didn't get in any trouble because they were impressed that I cited exactly where in international law it was. So
cruel and unusual punishment.
Yeah. I mean, it really. They really said the principal came and said, "Well, look, we're not actually beholden to international law, but nice try. I'm not going to punish you."
The reason why Netanyahu is not going to get arrested when he comes to the United States, same thing.
Yeah.
So going back to the story, so it's a thing of like Dank said, you essentially have a solid discipline structure because, like he said, those pilots that are taken off of flight rotation, that work has to be pulled by other pilots now. So it's kind of a thing of like, you prevent people from not being disciplined by showing this is what happens when you are insubordinate and disobey an order. You get thrown in the brig or you get taken off of flight rotation for a week or for a few weeks. And one of the really cool things is, so gonna go back a little bit. So with Helios, right? I told you like their pilot training split between two phases. The first phase is a lot of classroom work and a lot of sim time, right?
Right, makes sense.
And Andrew kind of preaches about the classroom because like you can go to the sim and you can ace on the sim, right? But you need to know how to change your weapons, how to do all that. You're not going to learn that on the sim. You're going to learn that from book. So he's very hit home with like the classroom portion of phase one of Viper training because he noticed something where if you don't have a classroom portion to compare when you do, without a classroom portion, you have a lot of Viper pilots who don't know what they're doing when they go to like fly actual Vipers, right?
Yeah,
but
we do that actual pilot
by the way,
training.
if it's nice work with the boarding party, it's a real pain in my ass right now.
This is a fun battle to watch. I'm not actually sure which one of you two. Not sure which one of you two is going to end up winning in this case.
Yeah, I think I've got a good chance of winning, but it's not certain because I haven't played in so damn long.
But anyway, so it's just a thing of like, there's a lot of ways that Andrew kind of like, enforces discipline and stuff. Because like I said, at the end of the day, like, and I brought this up with Dank in the chat. If you don't punish somebody for breaking the rules, they're just going to do it again and again and again until everything falls apart. That's why it's so important to, do that. So, yeah.
Andrew is a very firm believer, and you need to put your foot down when you have problems or not.
Or you don't have a foot to put down pretty soon.
Yeah. And he has never once. And I was telling Dank, like, yeah, the civilian fleet that he was with, so they kind of did what Galactica did. They didn't tell anybody that the Cylons looked like humans, right? Because they didn't want people freaking the fuck out.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense.
Long story short, it got out because I guess it was like put out over the air, all over the radio and stuff.
Well, I mean, Talk Wireless was a thing. That was their version of social media.
Yeah. So it kind of, it got out no matter what. So what wound up happening is there was an increase in like panic and a large increase in like distrust against the military, because like, hey, you guys covered this up and lied to us about this, right? It got so bad to the point where Helios's Marine complement had to be bolstered. Both Jupiters had to increase the amount of Marines they had on guard rotation. And because like they were so worried about like someone trying to bomb one of the ships. But once now Andrew is a military man first, but also a public person second, right? So he kind of went on the air. I'm like, listen, I understand there's a lot of people in the fleet who
are a bit pissed off.
He's like, listen, I understand that you guys, the civilian fleet we have with us now is pissed that we didn't tell them anything. But we didn't want to say anything about it because we didn't want to cause a panic, and we didn't want people falsely accusing people of being silent agents.
Right.
So once he kind of went on the wave, and like he's like, listen, like, he's like, listen, he's like, listen, like, we've come up with some very solid methods to detect Cylon. Like, yeah, like, I really don't, he's like, at this point, I really don't mind if it's out there. But it's a thing of, like, we would have kind of, like, we would have liked it if we told you guys, but I guess this is not going to work. So long story short, so it became a thing of where it almost got to the point of a full-blown, riot, right?
Makes sense to me.
In the fleet. But once Andrew got on the air and explained, hey, this is why we did it, everybody's like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense now. That makes a lot of sense. Because the one thing that, when Galactica told their civilian fleet that Cylons looked like them, the one thing that Dama did wrong was not reassuring the people.
He didn't think that was necessary because of his experience. He never dealt with civilian authority, really. That was the theme of the show. Military shelters its people.
Yeah. But, it's just a thing of, like, Andrew's a very firm believer in, like, listen, if you want to keep people happy, you also need to keep the civilians happy.
Yeah.
Right? So that's how he did it. So I am going to go because it's getting late here and I need to get some sleep. So I will talk to everybody later.
Wait. We're almost done here.
Okay. So kind of long story short, that's kind of like that's the story I want to write. I'm still trying to figure out how like iron out the lore and some stuff in the lore, but that's kind of what I want.
Where are you going to publish the story? Fan fanfiction.net or your own website, or what you're just gonna write it and share it?
I'm gonna write it and publish it on fanfic.net. See how well it does, and if it does well, then I'll make a website for it.
Honestly, there's actually a decent number of people on fanfiction.net that want to see BSG fanfiction. I mean, my fics have gotten a surprising amount of
I never finished posting my
attention.
stories there, but they did very well.
Sorry, what did you say?
I never finished publishing my stories there, but I did very well.
Yeah. It's because there's such few that are coming out recently. Most of the BSG fan fiction that exists is pretty old. But there are some really good stories out there that are from a long time ago, but that have either been abandoned or the authors are long gone.
Dang.
Yeah.
I'll get DMs real quick.
Okay.
I think this is GG.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for who though?
That's the question.
I mean, my capital ships are wearing out fast.
Yeah.
How's the air war going for? My squadrons are pretty beat up, but I still got a pile.
I have none. Yeah.
I figured that was the case.
Yeah.
So like, and so you know how so with the Helios flight crews, right? Like with the pilots and stuff, they do like actual like IRL like simulated war games. Like they will literally have like pilots from like one Jupiter or the other act as like the Cylons, and they will do legitimate like simulated war games.
Yep.
I mean, that's kind of something that militaries tend to do. So,
Oh, I screwed up with that Jupiter. I could have made it last longer.
My bad. I'm back. My bad.
yeah. See.
I'm not playing again after today. If anyone's looking for me, if my opponent wishes to play you, Dank, that's fine.
Yeah, I will play. I know I haven't had a lot of time to play this game recently, or games in general recently. But
you're in college. That kind of
yeah.
All right, boys. I'll talk to you later.
I've been quite busy earlier this semester. During the election season, I was quite busy. I got to meet a bunch of interesting people.
Did you work in the election?
So I am the treasurer of my college Democrats Association. So I'm the third highest. And I have a friend who was in a precinct who she's a precinct was basically the director of the precinct that the college is in. So she was like, "Hey, you want to come volunteer at these events?" And I was like, "Sure." And in the course, I got to meet Harris. I got to meet Waltz. I got to meet a bunch of other people as well. I got to meet over this brief time, I met 4 governors, a couple of senators, and a couple of members of the House as well. So yeah, pretty crazy time to be alive.
Yeah, I was surprised that I wasn't surprised the Democrats lost because of the screw up of nominating Biden in the first place. But still, it was quite interesting how it all turned out in the end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was always the cost of living. Even when you've got factors outside of a president's control, that tends to do a lot of things. The other thing was that because the campaign chain basically flipped right around from Biden to Harris. On the campaign side, there were a lot of very inexperienced people. Like the person who was basically the field director for this local area, she was a college student who took some time off. So they didn't have. They were really throwing a bunch of people, inexperienced people, who admittedly a lot of them did very well, into the fray. But
wasn't enough.
No, yeah, it wasn't enough. Yeah, we'll see how these next 4 years go.
I mean,
I don't know. I don't think things will be as bad as people expect, but they probably
no, because the military is going to stand up. They're not going to accept illegal orders. It's not going to be nearly as bad as everybody thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
but it's still going to be. It's going to be a clown show because that's what the Russians want when they backed him the first time. He's a nut. He's definitely showing signs, in my opinion, of dementia. And yeah, you get what you pay for. America showed itself to be a misogynistic country. Hey, I have a political channel as well. I started it up years ago. I went heavy in this election, and basically, last week I published an article saying they're like the ancient city of Sodom. Sodom used to attack their guests, murder their guests, because it was against the law to show hospitality. And a lot of what was said in that portion of the Torah that was read in synagogue that week was really the Trump agenda.
Right. And I also think a lot of the I don't mean to bring too much of this up because I know this is a bit of a sensitive, for obvious reasons, a sensitive topic for you. But I think the stuff in the Middle East did not help what was going on because, I mean,
it certainly didn't help. But I don't think it was planned by Iran. Iran's been out to get Israel for some years. I think Biden mishandled it. The most reliable voters in this country are Jews, and there are not enough Jews in Pennsylvania to sway the state based on the results we got. But Michigan, Pennsylvania, several other swing states, enough to tip the needle, and we're absolutely the most reliable voters. Now, the Orthodox people we're mostly pro-Trump, but the majority of the Jews in this country are not Orthodox Jews, and that's a totally different situation.
The problem, though, regardless of what people actually think on the issue, is that the Democrats were really kind of caught between a rock and the hard place. Because on one hand, you've got the Jewish voters, but on the other hand, you've got a lot of the young people who...
And a lot of Democrats don't care about Israel anymore.
Yeah, a lot of the young people who like it or not. I mean, I personally, being on a college campus is a very interesting... you have with some things, you have to really watch what you say, even if you broadly align with a lot of the people around you. On a lot of other issues, sometimes you have to really watch what you say if you know what I mean.
Well, this way. My son-in-law was deployed in Lebanon. He did a 3-week tour in Gaza. He was getting shot at. He's in tanks, and he's not really in big danger. But I mean, he's in a war zone, and they haven't had that's my only possible source of grandchildren right now. So you know whose side I'm on. I'm on the side because I was there when the war started and I got shot at, and I came back with PTSD. Does that mean that
people
everything
don't understand?
The kids don't know. Kids in college. Why would they understand? Now, when they meet people
don't.
like when they meet people like Yosef Massoud, the son of the Hamas founder, who is very much pro-Israel, and I've done a few informal talks in chat rooms as well. When they hear the story of getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning and hearing the alarms and seeing missiles coming at my community,
that
and then you a lot of minds. But these kids are sheltered. They believe social media is true, and the government of Israel and the government of the United States has not bothered to spend a lot of time explaining their policy.
Right. That's the problem. The problem is that when you've got many of these people who are very misinformed on the issue and are, well, I mean, a lot of them are, some of them are misinformed and coming from a genuinely good place, but are misinformed. But then you also have some people who I think are unwittingly actors.
You also have people like Trump saying that Israel should have hit the nuclear plants. Israel would have hit the damn nuclear plants if Biden hadn't threatened to cut off their weapons if they did.
Yeah, it's Biden has been for I think his foreign policies had several major. He's not been decisive in his support for either Israel or Ukraine.
He was decisive. He came to Israel, caused a lot of traffic jams the first week of the war, but then. Again, from the beginning of his administration, he was indecisive about the bad deal Trump signed to withdraw from Afghanistan. If they kept 5,000 troops there, the Taliban never would have taken over.
Yeah.
All right, but Trump signed a treaty, and Biden didn't have the balls to break it.
Right, and it's you do not have. I personally believe that if Ukraine had been supplied with significantly more quantities of weapons, which we have sitting in warehouses, and if they had been given that stuff on an accelerated timeline, they would have won against Russia.
Oh, yeah.
We wouldn't have what's probably going to end up being a defeat for them at this point.
Well, they're saying they're going to refuse to give back land, but what's really going to happen in Ukraine is when's the U.S. aid going to stop flowing? Probably this year. The last of the money will be spent on weapons, but that's buying weapons to replenish our stocks of old weapons. If an M1 tank goes to Ukraine, it's already there. All we're doing with the funding for Ukraine is paying to replenish our own weapon stocks for artillery and other weapons we already drawn out of inventory and given to them. But Biden was slow and indecisive. I mean, he just got around to letting long-range missiles be shot into Russia against military installations. Day one. Name the only guy who was against the killing of the target assassination of Osama bin Laden.
The problem was also
you know who that was? Yeah, Joe Biden.
And it's also a lot of the capabilities that Ukraine desperately needed and got introduced to them were just introduced too late. I mean, there are there are hard limitations in terms of training and in terms of like actually getting the supplies to them.
You see my feed? You see that the Saturn how many kills it has? 5 kills.
Wow.
When you said limits, I picked a fleet with Defender and I boosted Weps in all 3 Mercuries. I figured that the 3 Defenders could take the high Mercury, and the Mercuries would take all their other targets apart at extreme range, and you never get close enough to do damage. The only ship that did significant damage was the Mercury got beat up badly by your Mercury, but survived. And the Jupiter, because I didn't put it in defensive mode, got chewed up because I didn't pay attention to wiping out your ships in the correct order. Still, I mean, how many? Let me see. Jupiter got 1 kill. Defender actually ran into a Mercury, but didn't get credit for a kill. And the 2 living Defenders didn't get any kills. I'm going to play the replay. I'm going to turn it off the audio so we can talk politics and not have it mess up the censors at YouTube.
It's pretty funny. We're also technically not supposed to be talking about it in this Discord.
But you know, if they ever crack down on me about that, I got my own Discord, so it's not a problem. They don't bother me because I'm there so rarely these days anyway. But
I mean, it's also it's voice chat, so unless they're recording it,
Right. Yeah, exactly right. You're totally on target about that one too. They exist because of O'Neill and his bullshit in the last conquest, trying to turn it into a Trump's coming back parable story, and you know I don't really. O'Neill got zapped several times in the last conquest for doing narrative stories in the chats on the conquest about trying to invent some backstory for his colonial Trump, basically. And he's a big Trumpy, and I don't mind that. This became real for me because I did in 2023. I was in synagogue, and I know my synagogue's mostly Trump because it's a bunch of Orthodox Jews. This guy came after me 3 weeks in a row. I go to the lobby during prayers because I can't sit still. And so the guy comes out to me and spews some very vicious anti-Biden stuff, anti-president, just disrespectful to any president of the United States. And so finally, after 3 weeks of him spewing this to me, I said, you know, just because you're in this synagogue does not automatically assume that you're talking to a Trump supporter. The rabbi says not to talk politics in the synagogue. You should stop talking politics to me. So this guy turns out to be he carries 245 millimeter semi-automatic pistols. He's a former police officer. He decided I was evil. He started following me around the synagogue and telling me I was evil, and that I needed to stop being evil. So in 2023, we heard the rabbi after I threatened to hit him if he continued going into my 6 feet circle to attack me on my politics and call me evil. The rabbi said, you can't talk to each other anymore, and don't talk politics on this. He was done, but a year later he's doing the same thing again. And this time he invites me to come outside so he can shoot me. I said, no, you're going to shoot me in the synagogue so everybody sees what a peckerhead you are. It's Missouri. I went to the University City Police, and they suggested that there's nothing stopping me from getting my own AR-15. And I'm like, that's not really what I want to do as far as solving my problems with politics. Especially if they lose. Well, I think that basically, I'm very pleased that the Senate has pushed back on recess appointments already, and that no state in the union is going to put Trump on the ballot a third time because he's won twice, and in 4 years he will serve twice. J.D. Vance, I could deal with. Democrats are going to win the next election if they. Yeah, Bozo the Clown could win as Democrats in the next election. But my wife got in my case I was being too loud, so I got to talk much more softly. So basically, this guy. I have three choices with this guy who threatened me the second time. I can get an order of protection against him, which is useless because the only way to get that in Missouri is that he has to actually threaten you with a weapon in your hand. And a negotiated truce with the rabbi, which is he never talks to me again about politics in the synagogue or follows me around outside the synagogue. Because if he does that again, I have a 5-foot wooden cane, and the reason I carry that is because I have balance issues and because I could take his head off if I have to. or hit him in the legs to run away. He's an older man. He's a retired police officer. He's probably harmless. That's why he thinks he can get away with calling people evil. But he's the only idiot in shul who is actually in synagogue who's actually wearing, against the rules, the MAGA hat. I found out where he lived and encouraged some friends of mine to donate some Harris gear. You never figured out it was me, and it wasn't me. I just suggested it. I didn't. They told me later that they did do it, and he was very upset. But that's what you get for threatening people. So I'm recording some replays. Asipus, are you still here? Are you going to play against Dank? My wife. Well, we're off the recording anyway. I turned it off. Well, obviously I will be here during the Jewish Sabbath, and I'm being hit by work. You know, I'm on vacation till December 9th.
Get everything ready and bearing on the hostels.
When is finals week? Well, finals week is in December usually when I went to University of Connecticut. Yeah.
Quadrant on me. Watch your intervals, people. Fire control is warmed up and preparing solution.
Yeah.
Thrusters nominal.
I got a month off when I was at UConn as well. Number 6 points. Alright, well, hit me with an IM. I'll give you my phone number and you can stop by if you want.
Orders down the hall. I need covering fire.
I live in U City, if you're familiar with St. Louis area. University City, near the university.
Escort clearance zone is active. Marines to airlock Beta and Delta. Grab your sidearm, Colonel.
Well, I'll happily provide a blacked out copy of my driver's license if it helps, or my rabbi is a reference, so don't worry about that. It's up to you. It's not a big deal with me, and I'm not off except for Christmas. My wife's tentative travel plans back to Israel are December 31st, but so far we're only got a ticket to Athens because no one's flying to Israel, except for El Al and Israel. Bye-bye. See you later, Dank. Be safe. Let me know when you're in St. Louis by IM. I check it.